Hello, my name's Andy. Welcome to episode 75 of Keeping Water. This is going to be a slightly shorter episode this week, mainly because I'm really busy at the moment, well at the time you watch this, getting some of the jobs done that I said I was going to do in January. So I've got less time to make videos, but I have started doing some of the jobs and I'll share what I've got up to so far. The first job I've got done isn't directly connected to the pond, but it is part of the garden. And it's part of an overhaul of the garden that I wanted to do just to make things look a little bit better, even though I'm not great at landscaping, if you can call it that. Anyway, what I've done is we had two fruit trees towards the front of the garden, and we've moved them to the actual front garden and replaced them with the Christmas tree that was planted at the back of the garden and with a potted Christmas tree that's been in the house for the last month, and kind of hoping it's going to survive in the garden. Now, the original Christmas tree was also a tree we'd used in the house during December a few years ago, and it survived well. Now, we've tried this again with another tree which didn't survive quite so well, and I'm not really sure what the difference is, but we'll see, and fingers crossed, and hope it works this time. But I think the pair of them look a little bit better, and because of the way they grow and they're a bit more robust than the fruit trees, it does help when I've got all of the pond stuff out and the hoses and cables and stuff, so it's probably a better idea. I've actually started doing some of the jobs in and around the pond as well, and probably the most significant, and that is to remove the netting that covers the pond to stop the leaves from the trees getting into the water. And also to remove the membrane that I'd put across the pebbles to make it easier to get the leaves up at the end of autumn. It's a pain of a job to do, because not only do I have to remove the covers and any leaves on the netting and the membrane, I also have to pick up any leaves around the rest of the garden, because obviously once the netting's off, the leaves will invariably end up in the pond. So it was going to be slightly easier, I thought, this year, because I'd have the membrane on the pebbles, which is the hardest bit last year, but I wasn't expecting my broom to break. Also, I've got a kind of a grabbing device thing to pick up lots of leaves, but I couldn't find that. It's somewhere in the garage. So I had to resort to just getting down on my hands and knees and picking them up by hand. As you can probably see from what I'm showing on what is at the moment a green screen, I did a little time lapse. And it's a really fun job, as I'm sure you can imagine, but it's a necessary job. As you might also see, I've been looping the time lapse because rain stopped play as far as filming went, and although my iPhone and the case it's in is meant to be waterproof, I don't really like to risk it, so I stopped filming. And anyway, I don't think you seeing me picking up leaves is that exciting anyway. So I finished off getting all the leaves and picking up the leaves off all the membrane and all the patio area, and any leaves that hadn't really started to mulch down. So if they were amongst the earth and the wood chip and they started to mulch down, I left them, but if they were still able to be blown around by the wind and end up in the pond, then I picked them up. And once I'd done that, I could pick the membrane up, and then I could pick the netting up, and then I've got what you can see now. And that's my pond back again, which is super. So I can see the fish better, it's easier to clean the pond, it's easier to do maintenance, and yeah, it's looking okay. The fish weren't too thrilled with me doing lots of work around the pond, and I think they'd probably prefer to have the netting on if they'd have a choice. But for me, it looks a lot better. Now, the marginal plants don't look super, especially the irises, and they need cutting back, and I had planned to do that today, but really it's easier to do it when I get in the pond, and as I'll be getting in the pond over the next couple of days, I think it's probably better to do it then. But they're not too bad, they're just dying off for winter really, so I'll cut them back. I was able to see the fish a little bit after taking the netting off, and I did see some of the fry, which was good, because you're always a little worried when you can't see fish about how well they're getting on, especially fry, which obviously, as we had a few days of colder weather, but nothing too bad. But they're okay, the ones I could see. The rudd are their usual selves, doing their circuits around the pond, and the carp weren't super happy with me doing anything around the pond, so they were hiding down in the rear left corner. I will be feeding them a bit because now I'm able to observe them more, and with the weather a bit warmer for a couple of weeks, I will start feeding them again. Talking about getting in the pond, as I was, I'll tell you a little bit about what I hope to be getting done over the next week, and hopefully then be able to show you in next week's episode. So, as I said, I'll be getting in the pond, I'll be tidying up all the marginal plants. I'll also be tidying up some of the pipe work and the cable and making sure that all looks a bit neater. And also I'll be doing that job that I've mentioned in upgrading the filter, which will involve a little bit of drilling into mortar around the wall of the pond and also drilling into the shed. And again, some of that I'll need to be in the pond to do, which will be fun. And then I can install the latest upgrade to the filter. And again, I'll show you all that next week. Well, I also need to do some more digging. I did quite a lot of digging in moving the trees, which was harder work than I was expecting. But I have to do a fairly significant amount of digging. As you may or may not know, I have a sump that's made out of an old plastic bin that I drain into when I'm cleaning my moving bed. But actually I want to have a larger capacity sump. So I've got a water butt that we don't really use, but is quite large. So I'm going to be hopefully digging a large enough hole to bury that and then use that as a sump for any of the filtration in the shed that I can then drain water to. And hopefully it mean I won't have to drain it straight away. I'll be able to drain it a couple of times a week rather than every day if I'm sending water to it from my filters, which may give you a clue about what I'm adding to the filtration. So yeah, that's probably the hardest bit of work I'm going to do actually, is digging a big enough hole for the water butt to fit into to have a larger sump, because my garden is 99% clay and it's hard work. But hopefully I'll get that done, and again I'll show you what I've been up to. I won't time lapse me digging, I don't think you need to see that, but I will show you before and after if all goes well. Yeah, so that's what I'll be getting up to in the pond over the next week. I'm also going to do some underwater filming on those days when I'm not disturbing the fish too much. And with the netting off, it'll be a little bit brighter even on cloudy days. So I'm hoping to get some good quality footage of the fish. And I'll either show that in next week's episode or in a future episode, or maybe in a clips video during the week. We'll see. Yeah, and that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this slightly short episode. I haven't had a huge amount of time to get this done, but hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, please like. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. And I will see you next time.